Hello, and welcome again to another series in the Inspiral Wellbeing Toolkit. So we've been doing these now for a little while, and thank you so much to everybody for the feedback. We've had really positive feedback, and it's been a pleasure to do them, and I'm so pleased that they have been useful for everybody. So that's really, really good news, and I think we will carry on doing them, won't we?
I think so,
Because
yeah.
they're good fun,
Definitely.
and it's great to see everybody, and people seem to find them useful. So we'll keep you posted on when the next ones will be coming on. But enough about that, because we're about to start a new one. So it's a very exciting one.
Absolutely. And our guest today is the incredibly gifted medium, author, and teacher, Claire Broad. And we have had the honour of hosting Claire. And literally everyone who came to Claire's workshop left feeling uplifted, more confident, and definitely more connected to the spirit world. So I can't wait to speak to Claire and for her to share her wonderful wisdom with you all. So welcome, Claire. Hello.
Claire.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on. One day we'll get that hug again, eh?
I know.
Virtual hug.
Yeah, well, Claire, so much has happened since we last saw you. And basically, this has happened. I've got the digital copy. I'm waiting for my paper copy. Can you see that? Sorry, there's a light shining on it. What the dead are dying to teach us. One, I love the title.
Yeah,
because the dead are always dying to teach us. So what inspired you to, obviously your lifelong work inspired you to write this book? And for me, what I love about this book is that my motto is keep it simple. So when I read your book, I went, yes. On the same page, literally. It was, I wish that I'd written it, basically, because every single word, it's so easy to read. It's easy on the eye. If I could find my glasses, it would be even easier. But it's so easy to read, and just packed with life stories and gifts from you.
And Claire, tell us what about the title as well, because it is a very cool title. Did that take a long time? Because I
know. No, actually, so those two questions tie in together, because for 20 years I was told by the spirit world that I was going to be writing on their behalf, which seems like a big responsibility, and I dismissed the idea because I didn't think I was a writer, to be quite honest. I'd failed English 3 times at school. Writing didn't seem to be the thing that I thought I was here for. But this message kept repeating. So for 20 years, different mediums would pass on information, tell me about the cover of the book and what it would look like, and the information that would be presented, i.e. that I'd be talking in a very simplistic manner, Krisha, speaking to the everyday person, trying to make this knowledge accessible. But I did nothing about it, like I said, for 20 years. And I didn't feel inspired to write a book. But I received a message in, I'm trying to remember the years now. I can't even remember the years. I think it was something like 2018, 2016. I can't remember. Around there. It's in the books. And basically there was a message telling me that the time was now and that I was to write for the spirit world. And then literally the week after I received this message, I got a call from our dear friend, Teresa Chung, and who's an afterlife author, and she said that she'd heard about me, and one thing led to another. She asked if I'd collaborate with her on a book, and I knew that book was going to happen. But I had actually thought that was it. I thought I'd done my bit, I'd written the book I'd been asked to write, and I didn't think there was anything else. So I went off to a healer that I know, who, as she was giving me some energy healing, she picked up on my spirit guide, White Feather. I write about him in What the Dead Are Dying to Teach Us, and she basically said he was telling me there was a book that was to be written by me, that the first one was the springboard, if you like, and that I would start writing in February 2019, 18. I'm lots. I don't know where I am on the time.
Yeah.
And because I finished in February 2019, you see, so I know the 19's important. But to the month that I would start writing, and at the time I didn't have an idea what I would write, and I didn't have a book deal. So I just thought, oh, well, if that's going to be, they'll find a way. This is not how you get a book deal normally. Usually it takes a long time to find someone to give you a book deal. In the December of 2017 then, I received a phone call. I started writing in 2018 in the February, exactly as I had been told I would. The phone call was from a publisher who just said, I've seen your first book, I'd like you to write another one for me, please. And I didn't know what I was going to write because this is spirit-led.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I said to my spirit guides, okay, if you want me to write this book, I don't know what it is that you want me to write. Can I have a title? And I asked that question, it went, boom, what the dead are dying to teach us. So, and it just, you know, my editor said that's what it's got to be called because they picked the title. Right. And that's where we went. Now it's a long title and a lot of people always say it wrong, but it is spirit inspired. And that's how that all came about. And then basically the book came through me. So as I sat to write, as I literally just sort of followed my own personal life experience, because I only ever talk about what I know personally, have experienced. I've been very involved in, if you like, the scientific research, not in a boring way, but in trying to understand what does science know that I don't, what experiences am I having that science isn't having, and trying to, you know, reconcile the two, because I'm quite analytical. So I knew that I wanted to bring to it an element of logical thinking and it not to be too far away with the fairies. For me, spiritual practice needs to be something that's applicable to everyone in everyday life and not something that's so far out there that people think just gifted people have these experiences, because that's just simply not true. So but that's all I knew. And as I started to write, I realized there were 7 lessons coming through by the end of the book. So my very clever editor and I, we worked out how we could structure it in these lessons and add in, you know, there's calls to actions in there with tips and tools to help people. Yeah, because I really believe that mediumship, good mediumship, is about people understanding first and foremost who they really are. That's the purpose of the medium, is to provide evidence of consciousness surviving physical death. It's not to just perform and do something amazing. That person has a nice, you know, morning thinking, wow, that was impressive, and leave. The idea is to try and provide some evidence so that people can understand who they really are, which is an eternal being, consciousness, energy, a being, a spiritual being having a physical experience. And then for them to understand that they can have this relationship with the spirit dimensions for themselves. And of course, we'll have it to varying degrees of success. And it isn't all about trying to communicate with spirits and spirit guides. That's part of it. But for me, it's about getting in touch with that eternal aspect within yourself. And then you can live your best life because you're living more free of fear. Your life has more meaning, has more purpose. And really, that's the essence of the book, because that's what the dead are dying to teach us, that we go on, that life is meant to be enjoyed, even though life is suffering in many ways, that we can transcend that, and that even then the suffering is temporary, because we will move on, reaching ever higher and higher states of understanding, basically. And it's through that triggering and through that suffering, having to lose people, say goodbye to people, loss, heartache, all that kind of thing, that we grow. So it's a book of hope, I think, as well as, like I said, a sort of, for the skeptical mind, the scientific research that's available that is kind of echoing that consciousness survives in some way, shape or form. That's it in a nutshell, really.
Thank you. I mean, it's, for me, what I love about it is, one, it is so easy to read, and there are so many things that you glean from it. I I really love working with children, for instance. And when my children were little, they would be talking to spirit all the time. I mean, my oldest, she was in the kitchen one morning and was talking to somebody called Florence in the kitchen. And I realized that she was only 2 years old, and the language that she was using to describe what Florence was wearing was way beyond the years of a 2-year-old. Even down to the ruffles of the white blouse coming over the black jacket. Now, because talking and communicating with spirit was normal to me, I kind of normalized it for them. So the piece that you wrote about doing the visualizations with your children, is this something that you could go out and teach in workshops for younger children? Or do you think that kind of we're not quite there yet? You know, with the mainstream still hasn't caught up with, I mean, you've been on Radio 5 Live. It's people like you, Claire, that are getting this message out and normalizing things like mediumship and communication. Whereas I still wonder whether people are ready for children to go to workshops to connect. Well, I think they already are connected, aren't they? But for them to actually learn more about it. How do you feel about that?
Well, I believe until we reach a day where we're actually teaching children in schools the spiritual aspect of life, and I don't mean the religious aspect, but when they actually begin to understand, I'm a physical being, I'm a mental being, my mind, my thoughts are energy in their own right, and I have a soul, I'm essence, I'm energy, until they understand that they're that tripart being, and that reality, you know, on one level is duality and another level is spirit, then I don't believe that we will fully be able to bring humanity forward. So I'd love to see that day, but I think unfortunately we're far off that. However, as you say, children are naturally connected to the spirit world, and the reason why I was writing about the experiences that I share with my children and help them to understand that the realm of consciousness, thought, is a real reality that shouldn't just be dismissed as imagination, is because at the age of 4 I gave a message from my grandfather who was deceased. So children are already very in tune with the spirit dimensions, and we do them a disservice by, you know, telling them it's imaginary friends, it's only imagination, it's just a dream, it's, you know, because what we don't understand as adults is that to the child's brain, which only exists in delta and theta brainwave patterns until the age of 6, that they are very much in a dreamlike imaginary world the whole time, and the brain doesn't develop into the alpha and beta states until you move past that age into adulthood, which is where logical thinking and the left brain kind of analytical skeptical mind comes into it all, and then we tune ourselves out of all of that reality and forget that it even existed, really, and dismiss it. But so actually, when people worry about children being involved with, if you like, spirit communication, what we're really talking about is realms of consciousness here. They're naturally in tune with it from young, and then we lose that ability and have to learn to stay in touch. So for me, I'd love to see people in school being taught mindfulness, being taught how to control the mind and go into their inner self and soul, because for their own mental well-being they'd be better off for it, and as adults we would be better off for it, which is why I do these exercises with my children from young, because it stimulates imagination, creativity, you know, there's so many benefits, helps them how to stay more relaxed if they have stressful times through exams, whatever. They've already learned relaxation techniques. If nothing else, you know, they don't have to be connecting in with the spirit dimension, but they're open to it if it comes their way without fear or judgment. And that's what I would like to see.
Yeah. So what do your children think of what you do?
Well, my eldest is absolutely on board because she's had her own psychic experiences. She's never seen any spirit beings, any deceased people. But she's highly creative, and I think the two things often come together. but she's because she's had a lot of her own psychic insight, she can trust what I'm saying as relevant, because she knows she's experienced things outside of what society would consider the norm, even though it's perfectly normal, and so many people have deja vu and premonitions and all sorts of things happening. My youngest daughter is far more skeptical, because she seems to be naturally less in tune with it, and so finds it harder to believe and is more skeptical about it all. But you know, they're open-minded.
Yeah.
But it's just, for me, it's just about, like you said, normalizing it. It's not something supernatural, and if anything happened, it would just be there on the radar and they wouldn't become frightened of it. It's just another aspect of human potential, human experience. So we just need to get rid of all the nonsense, as far as I'm concerned. It's just another aspect of our universe and reality, and when it's understood better, it becomes less magical and, you know, full of superstition and fear. And that's what I'm trying to do, get rid of the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just imagine them bringing their friends home for supper, and their friends going, "So you're a medium? What does that mean? Can you give me a message?"
Well, they're at the age now where their friends think it's all really cool, you know, so I'm cool for a couple of years.
And do they kind of go,
Make the
you know,
most of it.
is it just like you turn a tap on and can you just give us a message now? You know, I bet they're so excited, aren't they?
Yeah, they're excited, and then there's naturally fear, because they've watched Hollywood movies, and you know, they want the fear factor, and you know, so I'm probably quite dull actually, because it make it all very boring.
I mean, speaking of fear factors, have you ever had an encounter with a spirit that you've just thought, oh no, move away, can't let this one in?
Very, very rare. There's only 2 occasions when I can think that I've actually felt, if you like, uncomfortable with a communication. I've never felt threatened, ever. But that's because I understand that our mental well-being, we're dealing with realms of consciousness here. So I understand that my mental well-being sets me into the frequency of those in the spirit dimension. So like attracts like in this world. So I'm not coming to it with fear, and I'm not coming to it from lower frequency emotions. So, you know, anger, or I'm not goading the spirit world. I'm not looking for negativity. I'm not, you know, trying to experience that. So I've been taught by my spirit teachers, just if there's anything that comes up that I don't feel comfortable with, it just don't engage. Don't engage. Close the communication down, just like if you were hanging up on a phone call. It's my mind, and shut the doorway, get into everyday earthly life again, and leave it behind. And that's always served me. I haven't had any reason to fear. I'm not saying that there isn't the dark and the light out there, because I really believe that in this world, and so with spirit, or the consciousness realms, as above, so below.
Yes.
So, you know, but I just, I don't engage with it in this world. I don't engage with it in the next. And I've never had a problem. So that's the way I look at it.
Absolutely with you on that one. I went many years ago to a class, and it was all about, oh, you've got to protect yourself, and you've got to do this before you open up, and you've got to do this ceremony, and then that ceremony, and then smudge, and then do this and do that. And by the end of it, I was just thinking, well, you know, if you're light, and you just go to the light and work with the light, that side almost brought me out of the place that I was in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, where I've come to understand is that the realms of spirit, where all of that is applicable, if you like, all the smudging, the rituals, they're rituals.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're dealing with the psychology of the person. So it doesn't matter what the ritual is dealing with the psychology of you, because we're dealing with, like I said at the beginning, you are a physical being, you are a mental being, that's your spirit, if you like, use that label, they're just labels, and then you are soul, essence, you know, source, whatever you want to call it. You're a mixture of those 3. So when we're dealing with the spiritual realms, we're dealing with that mental aspect, consciousness. So if you take on a ritual where you're smudging or cleansing, it's the same thing. You're setting the intent, And your intent is, I'm going to work in safety, in love, in harmony. So like you say, Krisha, you can bypass all that, just go into source, into self, into soul, into love, into unconditional love, and come from there. Yeah. And when you do that, you are not aligning yourself. You're not even having to tell yourself there's something to fear. You're aligning yourself with the frequency of love, and those who can match that frequency can come. And if they can't meet you there, then they're not going to get in. And if at any time you feel uncomfortable, you close it down. You're in control of your own, because people seem to forget, this is where they give their power away. They forget that they are a spiritual being.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
They're an eternal being.
Yeah.
So, you know, we tend to think of them in spirit as being spirits, not ourselves. We see ourselves as a human being.
Yeah.
But we're misunderstanding the eternal nature within ourselves. So if we are just as powerful as that other spiritual being, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Claire.
I think that's a
reminder as well.
Yeah, it's important actually, isn't it, to think sometimes we just get so caught up in what we're told and how we've always believed that it's sometimes difficult to challenge those sort of pre-existing concepts. So I think that's probably why your book is so good, because it does do that, and it writes it in such a way that it's very easily to access for people that perhaps don't normally think in those terms. So
yes, thank you.
One of the mediums always should have a good catchphrase, shouldn't they? And you've got one, and the honest medium. I think that's a great title, because knowing you as I do, I can't think of a better description for what you.
Oh, thank you.
And I wondered what you felt that title meant to you.
So, yeah, I didn't give myself that title. I always think that sounds very egotistical when you label yourself something. Again, talking about getting rid of constructs of the mind and labels and things, you know, we're all spiritual beings. But yeah, basically, I was labelled the honest medium for the reason is that I don't fluff around it. And if I'm doing a reading and it's not working, then I say it's not working. Because, you know, mediumship's experimental. We're dealing with the mind. We're dealing with consciousness. You know, you can't make something happen. I can't make my brain reach the right states to get me out of, you know, analytical thinking and into stillness every time. And so sometimes readings don't work. So for me, the honesty means that I will just say it as it is at any given time. If I'm doing something well, if I'm doing something not so well, or should I say successful or unsuccessful, and that I'm just human. You know, I think a lot of people, spiritual teachers, put themselves up at the pedestal of guru. It's a big slippery slope down, because you can't be perfect. You're just human, aren't you, living an everyday life. You know, enlightenment isn't about being floating cross-legged and having some, you know, secret to life that no one else can have. So I just want to be honest about that, you know, just try and tell the truth, even my flaws.
Yeah, and amen to that, Claire.
Yeah, it's very refreshing to hear, isn't it? I think, yeah, that's a great attitude, I think.
So the other thing, now, I've often used a pendulum or oracle cards. I love an oracle card.
True.
When I'm working for myself, really, I'll always pick a card and think, oh, that will set me up for the day. Are there any tools that you either use for yourself or during readings that have helped?
So I don't use, yeah, no, I don't, sorry, I'm cutting in front of you. I don't use any tools during readings, purely because tools for me come into play when I'm using psychic, if I'm doing the psychic side of things. So a lot of people don't understand the difference between a psychic reading and a reading with a medium. So one isn't better than the other. They can be brilliant, but they're just different. So, you know, so psychic reading is using your intuition, your own feeling, connecting in yourself with the energy of your client. So your energy to their energy, feeling, sensing, what do I feel about this person? And you can use tools then. So I love tarot cards, for instance. That's, you know, I find them very accurate. If I'm doing something psychically, then I might use tarot for that. Pendulums can be used. I find them effective if I'm trying to work out how somebody's energy field is. Do they need healing? For me, the pendulum is very useful in sensing the energy field of a person, the electromagnetic field around them. But when it comes to actually doing a reading with the spirit dimensions, we're dealing with consciousness, mind. So there are tools that I may use, but I don't use them in readings. So I have tried in experimentation and in my own development to use tools. So I may use the talking board or spirit board, or that scary word, the Ouija board. It's all the same thing, which is, you know, at the end of the day, just a bit of cardboard with some letters on it. Because I've tried to see if the spirit world can guide my mind to the letters, as they were dealing with mind and consciousness, to see if I can spell out words, to develop my own clairaudience, or the ability to give names or details. So I've practiced it in that way. Nothing spooky. You've got to understand these are just tools, and it's all about you, your mind and your connection. And then I brought along here something which is quite exciting, which is my medium's trumpet, because you know, we're dealing, mediumship isn't just about communication as in with the mind, that's mental mediumship, but mediums often sit for development to try and see if they can get physical phenomena. So the idea of this trumpet, which is just made of cardboard, and this reflective surface, is that if you sit in the dark or turn the lights out low, just to have a red light on maybe, this bottom bit here is fluorescent, so you can see it at all times. Sometimes it's fluorescent up the top here, and you just pop it down, you know, and you just sit, you sit for spirit, you sit to develop your own connection with the spirit guide, you sit in what's known as sitting in the power, which is a deep relaxation, just to pull that energy in, let them come close and let them develop their connection with you. And in time, if you're lucky, that trumpet may move, they may bring ports. So in past there's been stones that have dropped down through it with mediums. You may hear names, it may lift, and you may hear names or sounds like a megaphone being spoken out of it. So these are the types of tools that people might use if they're sitting for development in mediumship, but usually not until they've developed the mental side first and are feeling a bit braver to see if they can get the physical side of things as well.
Well, that's the first for me, Claire. I've never seen a trumpet like that before. Only when people are trying to listen in to their neighbours next door.
Yeah, well, I had to have it made for me. You can't go to the high street and buy them. But and I've never seen it move, but it's never produced anything for me. So I can't say that I'm proficient with it. But you know, this is the thing. Mediumship is experimental. For me, it's a scientific pursuit. So it's about getting evidence of survival, information that I can get validated, that has come beyond my understanding or knowing. And then sometimes you may get, as you know, people hear about mediums in the past, you might get raps or taps or sounds or whistles, or, you know, can you get a ball to roll or a marble to come, or people talk about pennies from heaven, you know, coins coming down. These things happen. They're known as apports. And mediums sit for the development of all of that across time, just to see what is it I can do, how can the spirit world work with me. You can see here I've got some little bells here.
Yeah, see them.
I have just little things like that up in case someone wants to ring it. Never has been rung for me, but you know, if you don't put these things out, who knows? It's you know, for me it's in the you know, what's the word, spirit, pardon the pun, but you know, spirit of exploration. What's possible, human potential, what's possible.
And I love the fact, Claire, that you know, you still talk about your own development, your continuous development, whereas a lot of mediums that you see that, you know, on TV or, you know, kind of in the public eye, they never really talk about their own development, and the fact that it's still daily practice, and it's forever. Every single day you're learning, aren't you? And I love the fact that you talk about that.
Yes, because the thing is, it's a spiritual practice. It's a practice. That word, spiritual practice, you know, it's like exercise. If you don't do it daily, weekly, you lose that connection, because you're training the brain, for one, to move into altered states. So the brain has to learn to get into the theta and alpha states, you know, whilst you're awake, which is not the norm for the brain. Usually, though, the brain's only in those states when you're going to sleep as an adult. So you're trying to access those relaxed, deep states of being that you're usually having sleep whilst you're awake, which is what transcendental meditation and all of that is in. You know, it's all part of the same thing. You know, that takes years to develop, to still the mind in that way. And then obviously, you know, it's like a sport. Athletes don't just suddenly stop exercising because they've become the fastest runner in the world and think, well, that's it now, I've done all I need to do. You know, unless they maintain it, it's going to go. So people, I think the thing is, what one of my biggest bugbears is where I hear people say that they're gifted or they have a gift. They've been born with a certain skill set, like many of us have in many different ways. But, you know, even artists don't come to suddenly just doing Picasso. They've spent years and years developing, and this is what's not appreciated, I don't think, about mediumship, is the years. 24 years now I've been at this and still feel frustrated with my level of ability. And, you know, and I know I can give an evidential message now, but there are times when it just doesn't work. And then, you know, so you're constantly trying to get to be the best quality that you can be, and you have to just be happy with that, I suppose. But and recognize if you're not putting quality out there, just don't do it. Do it for yourself. You don't need to be in the public, you know.
I mean, speaking of getting frustrating when things aren't coming through, you know, what do you think happens when somebody comes, for instance, for a one-to-one, and you sit down and you tune in and just nothing's really coming? Or they're kind of blocking it, and they're not that they're blocking it, but they're saying, no, can't take that, no, can't take that, no, can't take that. And you're getting this. I'm sure it doesn't happen to you very often.
No, it does, Krisha. It happens.
I mean, you would kind of feel a bit frustrated, but how do you deal with that?
Well, this is where the honest tag's in. You know, it's calling it as it is. So basically, there's a million reasons why a reading might not work. And that's why before a client comes, they're always told up front that it's experimental. I can't guarantee results. They need to keep an open mind as to who might come through. Because, so for instance, this is one of the reasons why it might not work. As I just said, I have to get my brain into an altered state. I can't force that. It's like changing gears. Say I don't get so deep as I would normally, or if the spirit world can't blend with my mind, because mediumship is a blending of minds, because we're dealing with consciousness realms, dimensions. If they can't get as close to me, then the flow isn't there. So I can't develop the power to work and to get the information just coming out of my mouth. So it might be I'm in the way of it. It could also be, as you say, that the client, through no fault of their own, doesn't understand the process, may be nervous. Maybe sometimes I find that they are so needing a reading, even though they have to wait a good year or more to see me, that they can unwittingly block it because they're putting their energy out there, which is, you know, a nervous, anxious energy. It's not the energy of unconditional love and flow and communication. But also in the spirit dimensions, because, you know, just because you are no longer in a physical form doesn't mean that you are any different to how you were when you were in the physical form. So I find some spirit beings aren't as communicative. Or the way I like to describe it is, if you walked into a room now with a room full of people at a party, you didn't know any of them. Some you'd hit it off with, others it would be like drawing teeth. You know, 2 minutes can seem like forever. And it's the same thing in spirit. You know, some spirit communicators we're on the same wavelength. Others, we're just not flowing. So, you know, and it's a bit like Wi-Fi as well. So we can have, in strength of communication and energy, you can have like 1 bar, or I can be on 3. So there's a whole many facets as to why it wouldn't work. And to be honest, more reason for it not to work than for it to work. So whenever it does work, really, it's amazing. And you know, that's why it's you just got to be honest about it. That's how I you know, if my client can't understand what I'm saying, don't take it personally, Claire. It's not about your ego. You know, it hasn't worked. Own it. Say it's not working, because for somebody else it will work. And it's not about coming up every time like a champion with the look what I can do. You know, that's hard for me, because I want to do a good job and I'm conscientious, and I'm understanding that people. I think the biggest thing about this, Krisha, is the healing potential. And when you see the therapeutic nature of mediumship done well to high quality, not necessarily, you know, your mum saw you buy a red pair of shoes yesterday in Marks and Spencer's or wherever you were, giving an advert out there, but you know, that's all well and good and interesting. But when it's done to a level that will help somebody understand who they are, help somebody release their fears, help somebody move through their grief, or you know, just learn something deeper, it's a catalyst for change. And that, I think, is the pressure for me. I want to try and give an experience where I know someone is gaining something therapeutically that they then be able to go out from away from me and put to use in their life and be better for it. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And certainly my experience with mediums, 30 years ago my father died, and my relationship wasn't the best with him. He's a lovely man, but it was after his death, by having readings, that my relationship really healed. And you know, when I think about my dad, who's always around me, it's just pure unconditional love. And I have to thank, you know, mediums, and yes, he came through to me on several occasions. Whereas Matt, on the other hand, when I met Matt, I was like, come, you know, you've got to come and have a reading with me. It's so good. I want to show you this light. It was rubbish. It was so bad, wasn't it? And she was looking out of her window, kind of going, oh, actually, I'm going on holiday with my daughter later, and talking about that. And, you know, she just didn't seem to be in the zone at all. And that was your first experience, and you were like, really, you're into this? And I was like, I just wasn't a great example of one.
No, and that's it. I write about that in the book as well, about how to find a medium and how to recognize when you've had a good reading, because we're human.
Yes. So
you're going to bump up against people. And also, I believe it's horses for courses, Krisha. I know there are some people that come to see me that I'm not the medium for them. And it's same with that, what happened there with Matt, not the medium for Matt, you know. So, but like you say, there's a code of conduct, there's a quality of service that should be being given ideally. I wish the industry was regulated, it's not. But so if you have an experience that is below par, don't throw baby out with bathwater, just keep an open mind and try again, you know. Yeah. And hopefully don't be giving loads of money away.
No, yeah. And actually I did, because I did have another reading, didn't I, after that? Yeah, and it was better. You know, there were some aspects of, but I have had other readings, like, you know, and like you said, I think it all depends. You know, I had a palm reading once, didn't I, which I didn't really sort of get along with.
Yeah, he said you liked golf, and you were like, and you were like, I don't even like watching sport.
Well, yeah, that's true. But
for me, I learned. Oh, go on. Sorry, no, I was going to say I learned from all of those as well, though, because for me that is just as much part of the exploration and the evidence. Like, no, that isn't it. That's not it. You know, I included the science in the book about Dr. Julie Beischel and the stringent scientific process she put in place studying mediums, and she's got to the point now where she says she can scientifically prove that not all mediums are fraudulent. So, you know, there is things that you can put into place where you can see what's a good quality message, what isn't. And so when I'm having, like Matt there, being told something that is a miss, or not a hit, you know, that for me is just as educational as having an amazing reading, because it's teaching you what is it and what isn't it, you know, how to recognize it and when it's not there.
Yeah, and people like Randy, you know, who put up $1 million, you know, basically no medium was ever going to get the $1 million, because he made it absolutely impossible. But people still talk about that. People still go, well, no medium ever got the $1 million. Well, that's because it was never
this
possible
isn't it, the experiment for people that don't know, isn't it, that where $1 million was offered if a medium could be scientifically verified.
By a magician.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all good verification should be.
Yeah, it's flawed from the get-go. I've worked with scientists. I've been in touch with a lot of parapsychologists, scientists in this field who are skeptically minded and studying mediums in good faith. But unfortunately, and Randy, I think, was not necessarily coming from the wrong place, but I wouldn't personally choose to have a magician scientifically set my experiments up just because he's a magician.
Yeah.
And actually I've seen that the likes of Deepak Chopra put up $1 million for the skeptics to prove the opposite. And here's the thing, they'll never come to any agreement, because until science studies consciousness, yes, and the inner world, not the exoteric, but the esoteric, until they study that, they'll have no clue. So the scientists that I'm really sort of inspired by are the greats like Sir Roger Penrose, who worked with Stephen Hawking on black hole theory. He's not frightened to try and come up with a theory about consciousness. Until these great scientists do that, then really we're all just, tomato.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that. Yeah, and that's definitely where I come from in terms of consciousness and examining that, and as you said, looking inside rather than looking up at the heavens, actually thinking about consciousness as a individual thing in yourself. That's where you should explore. I've always felt that very strongly. There's I'm going to say the book because I always say the book, but there's a book by a guy called Dr. Robert Lanza called Biocentrism, which totally changed my perception of consciousness. And for anybody that wants to read a bit more about that in an accessible way, yes, it's quantum physics and all of this sort of stuff, but it's totally life-changing. There, I've said it. And I would definitely encourage. I'm probably even going to put the link down there, as I always do.
Yay!
Well, we're kind of, unfortunately, unbelievably, we are kind of running out of time. But I think you've said an awful lot about how you have used your time for development and things like that, and that's really interesting. And I wondered, as we sort of come to the end of this, whether you could talk us a little bit through how you balance your work and your home life and what you do to relax, because clearly your work is always with you. You can't really it's not like you can just turn the lights off at the end of the day in the office and head on home. It's always around. So I mean, could you give us an idea of sort of how you do turn off at the end of a session?
Yeah, well, I mean, I describe it a bit like if you think about watching the TV, okay, you can plug in to, say, the BBC, or you can plug into Netflix, okay, but you're not aware of the transmission until you actually tune into those frequencies. So as I'm working at the frequency of spirit, and when I'm not, I'm tuning out and tuning into another, into Netflix. So in my free time, that's what I do. I'm watching Netflix. I'm spending time. I'll give another ad, but watching TV, watching box sets. Love film, love music, books, cooking. I love food. So my husband likes to cook dinners. That's lovely. Spending time with my kids. Just very, very normal, everyday stuff. To be quite honest. Love music, concerts, the creative things, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. That's what I do to chill out and relax.
Sounds good. And I thought you might say creative stuff, because that's definitely the way you sort of come across as a very sort of
So that leads us into our deep and meaningful questions.
I hope you're ready for this.
Okay, Claire, get ready. Are you prepared for this one? What's your favourite colour?
Ooh, how do you pick one?
I know. You don't have to.
Right.
No, I think, well, given it's today it's purple. I like blue as well.
Yeah.
It's nice, isn't it? Yeah, 70s.
Says a lot about you.
70s.
The last book that you read?
The last book that I read, is one by a medium from the 1800s, wow, who was called J.J. Morse, and who was a trance medium. That means that he used to go into a deep, deep state of relaxation, and he would give a lecture about information that was well beyond his knowing. So J.J. Morse never had an education, never went to school, couldn't read and write. He would go into a trance state, and he would be invited to speak to eminent scientists, physicians, people of academia on their subject in trance. Wow. Which is absolutely fascinating. So I've been. He was called J.J. Morse.
Oh, okay.
And the book is called Practical Occultism. It's a very old book. You can't hardly. I mean, you can get it. It's been reproduced now online. See, the word occult just means hidden. Yeah. Hidden. So occultere, the eye. What the eye can't see. So the spirit, the spirit within. Yeah.
I know that. Okay.
It's so, and people get very frightened of that name and think of it as black magic and stuff. It's got nothing to do with it. It just means that which can't be seen. And so the book is called Practical Occultism that I was reading, which is about trance mediumship and the way mediumship works. But there's many lectures by J.J. Morse, and these mediums of the past were amazing. You know, the people like another one that I've read is 50 Years a Medium, which is by Estelle Roberts. She was amazing. She could go into a trance state and speak 19 different languages, and she could only speak English. So, you know, this is what I'm talking about, human potential. We don't understand the half of it.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. We'll Google that.
We will.
Yeah.
Last question.
Okay, let's go with this. The last movie you watched on Netflix, or indeed any other digital media platform?
Well, we are going through a period of lockdown here, so I've watched rather a lot of TV, to be quite honest, because I haven't been out. I've done the whole of Game of Thrones. We're making our way through Peaky Blinders.
Oh, right.
I've watched The Witcher.
Oh, I watched that. Yeah, with the guy with the long blonde hair. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed that. I'm just trying to think. And I love Star Wars, and I like all those kinds of movies that kind of, you know, all the Marvel films. That's all very me.
I love it. I know you've watched so many, you can't remember the last one you watched. That's
I can't. We are in lockdown. It's Peaky Blinders at the moment.
Well,
that spiritual mafia film.
I love Peaky Blinders. Absolutely love it.
I haven't seen it.
It's quite violent, Krisha.
I know. See, I can't do any like blood or gore. I'm just far too sensitive. I can't even watch it. Yeah. You have to warn me if there's ever a mask in a film. A friend of ours who's a film director, and unfortunately they use a mask in the film, and I can't even watch that film. So I'm can't do it. So have you watched Kardec yet? That's on Netflix.
No.
You'd enjoy that. Kardec. It's dubbed into English from French, but basically Kardec was a man who was a university professor who got involved with mediumship in the Victorian era, and basically set up spiritism in France and tried to prove it scientifically. So it's quite an interesting film, that.
Yeah, we just, well, I watched, you haven't watched it yet. I don't know where we are. We must have like separate rooms. He's like, I watched Peaky Blinders, I watched this, and I'm thinking, when?
I watched them with the kids, and I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know where, I'm up here doing my yoga up here, obviously.
You're being all spiritual.
Yeah, I am. Actually, I was watching Offspring. It's great. Yeah, he leaves the room. He's like, oh.
No, it looks good.
But yeah, no, I watched something called The Family. Have you heard that on Netflix?
No.
Yeah, it is a little bit sensationalized because obviously he's written a book about it, but it's about this, what they call the cult, behind the president and behind Congress in Washington. Very interesting.
Oh.
Yes.
That sounds interesting.
I think you would enjoy that one, Claire.
I would.
So, yeah, let me know when you've watched it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
so on that, Claire,
you.
do you know what? We cannot wait to see you physically on October the 17th, drum roll, when you come to work with Inspiral, and we're hosting you and a workshop that you're bringing back to the barn on the 17th of October.
It's
We can't wait.
Abington Barn, which is in Cambridge, and it's a spiritual events venue, and you can look them up online, just Google Abington Barn.
And Claire has run workshops there before and really successful.
It's brilliant.
You don't take more than 14 people. So you've heard it here, October the 17th for Claire's workshop, first come, first served, basically.
Thank you. It's such a lovely venue, yeah.
It is. Yeah, so.
And we had so much fun last time. Everyone loved it. It was a fantastic time. And we can't wait to see you again, Claire.
We will email all of the details out about that to everybody who's on the Inspiral mailing list. If you'd like to be on the Inspiral mailing list, then please join us at inspiralgroup.co.uk or go to the Facebook page, all of which I will put there by the magic.
And I'm sure that will be on your website as well, Claire, October the 17th at Abington Farm.
Yeah. It will. So that's www.clarebroad.com. Find me there.
Easy.
Yeah.
And simple. Claire, thank you so much for joining us and giving up.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
so I know how busy you are. And
thank you.
We'll put up all of the details for how people can connect with you as well. All right.
Lovely. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you for your viewers.
so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.